Punjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Madhava Punjabi Hari. Jai Mr. Paramahansa Parudhika Ashtoto to the Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parudhika Acharya Ashtoto to the Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Kuntaraj srimadbhagavatam ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, Bhakti Jamal. That one goes off. That one goes off. I don't have my device. That goes off. That goes off. Both of these side doors get open. This one gets turned on. Hopefully it's not oscillating. Over here? Yeah, just a medium is fine. Okay, what did I do here? Thank you. That's good. That's good. Narayanam namaskritya narang chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudiriye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtapayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. Before reciting this, did I do that one? No. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam, by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 30th day of August 2018 in SanDiego, a reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order, Chapter 5, frustration of the sacrifice of Daksha. Text number 5. Okay. Can you put it on low? I think that'll be sufficient. Thank you. All right, I'm going to wait till he gets back since we only have a couple of chanters. Good. I'm waiting until you get in position so you can chant with us. Otherwise, we'll fade out to silence. Okay, here we go. Agyapta evam kupitena manyuna Sadeva devam parichakrame vibhum Mene tadatma namasangarang hasa Mahiyasang tata sahak sahishnum Agyapta evam kupitena manjuna Sadeva devam patichakrame vibhum Mene tadatma namasangaranghasa Mahiyasang tata sahak sahishnum Agyapta evam kupitena manjuna Sadeva devam patichakrame vibhum Mene tadatma namasangharangasa Mahiyasam tata sahak sahishnum Agyapta evam kupitena manjuna Sadeva devam patichakrame vibhum Mene tadatma namasangharangasa Mahiyasam tata sahak sahishnum Agyapta evam kupitena manjuna Sadeva devam patichakrame vibhum Mene tadatma namasangharangasa Mahiyasam tata sahak sahishnum Agyapta evam kupitena manjuna Sadeva devam patichakrame vibhum Mene tadatma namasangharangasa Mahiyasam tata sahak sahishnum Agyaptaha, being ordered, evam, in this manner, kupitena, angry, manjuna, by Lord Shiva, who was anger personified, saha, he, Virabhadra, Devadevam, he who is worshipped by the demigods, Patichakrame, circumambulated, Vibhum, Lord Shiva, Mene, considered, Tada, at that time, Atmanam, himself, Asangharanghasa, with the power of Lord Shiva that cannot be opposed, Mahiyasam, of the most powerful, Tata, my dear Vidura, Saha, strength, Sahishnum, capable of coping with. Translation. Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, that black person was the personified anger of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he was prepared to execute the orders of Lord Shiva. Thus, considering himself capable of coping with any power offered against him, he circumambulated Lord Shiva. I'm going to read on, there's no purport. Many other soldiers of Lord Shiva followed the fierce personality in a tumultuous uproar. He, that personality, carried a great trident, fearful enough to kill even death, and on his legs he wore bangles which seemed to roar. At that time, all the persons assembled in the sacrificial arena, the priest, the chief of the sacrificial performance, and the Brahmins and their wives, wondered where the darkness was coming from. Later they could understand that it was a dust storm, and all of them were full of anxiety. Conjecturing on the origin of the storm, they said, there's no wind blowing, and no cows are passing, nor is it possible that this dust storm could be raised by plunderers, for there is still the strong King Barhi, who would punish them. Where is this dust storm blowing from? Is the dissolution of the planet now to occur? In the purports, Prabhupada calls him Old King Barhi. So Prabhupada will explain here. in the purport. Specifically significant in this verse is Prachina Barhir Jivati. The king of that part of the land was known as Barhi, and though he was old, he was still living, and he was a very strong ruler. Thus there was no possibility of an invasion by thieves and plunderers. Indirectly, it is stated here that thieves, plunderers, rogues, and unwanted population can exist only in a state or kingdom where there is no strong ruler. When, in the name of justice, thieves are allowed liberty, the state and kingdom are disturbed by such plunderers and unwanted population. The dust storm created by the soldiers and assistants of Lord Shiva resembled the situation at the time of the dissolution of this world. When there is a need for the dissolution of the material creation, this function is conducted by Lord Shiva. Therefore, the situation now created by him resembled the dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So, we can recall that in this chapter and previous chapter, we first heard about how Lord Shiva was so tolerant of Daksha. When the whole thing started, and Shiva did not rise from his seat to greet Daksha when he arrived at the other sacrifice. Then we had a series of insults culminating in cursing and counter-cursing. Brigu was cursing the followers of Shiva, and the leaders of Lord Shiva's group were cursing the others like that. But Shiva remained placid. He sat there. Eventually he got disgusted and he walked out. But he did not get angry at that time. Because he's exhibiting the behavior of a Vaishnava. Did I say Om Jnana? Sorry, forgetting things. He was the one who was the object of the insults, not his daughter, not his wife. And so he felt tolerant of this, and finally he just walked out and got disgusted. And he remained placid, even to the point where Sati took off in a huff, more or less, and she was there, and he was back at his place. But when he heard that she had been so disrespected that she committed suicide and she was now dead in God, then his anger manifested. And his anger is a very dangerous thing. His anger is manifested when the end of the universe comes. There's a classic thing, I remember seeing this even before I even heard about Hare Krishna. The chakra with Shiva dancing in the middle, with playing the drum, the din-din drum, which is this drum he plays when he has that Tandava Nritya. Tandava Nritya means the dance of devastation. They said the Lord Chaitanya would also dance in that way. Sometimes the earth would move a little bit. So, Shiva is in charge of that function. Everything material has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It comes into being by some force, some person or persons bring it into being. And then it stays for some time, and ultimately it's destroyed. And that holds for this whole universe as well, every universe. So creation is under the impetus or control of Lord Brahma. Of course, the ultimate creator and maintainer and destroyer is Krishna. But he expands himself and he deputes the Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva to do this. Vishnu maintains, and has been explained, that's the most difficult of the three. Creation is not easy, but maintenance is even more difficult, and destruction is the easiest of all. So Shiva here, when he hears about Sati's death, he becomes extremely angry, and he creates this Virabhadra, who's said to be anger personified. Now you notice that there was a word used about him in the first verse, Vibhum. Now Vibhum is also, Vibhu is also a name for Krishna. Vibhu simply means the great one, the powerful one. Just like in the 10th chapter, it's called the Vibhuti Yoga chapter. Vibhuti those opulences. Vibhu is the opulent one, person who is opulent. So Krishna is the supremely opulent one. He's known as Vibhu. But any powerful person, just like Narada Muni is sometimes known as Bhagavan, because he's a very great personality. But he's not the original Bhagavan, full of 6 opulences. So similarly, this Virabhadra, who is the personified anger of the Lord, he can be called Vibhu because he's invincible. The Ribhu demigods could chase away the other followers of Lord Shiva who were there, who were ready to retaliate. But they were more powerful. And so Prabhupada explains in the purport, one of the purports we read yesterday, about the rivalry between Brahma Tejas and Shiva Tejas. You remember that? So ultimately Brahma Tejas is more powerful. But oftentimes we find this Brahma Tejas as being wielded by the followers of Daksha was not transcendental. I mean, they were wielding it against followers of Shiva, who is God who didn't touch the material entity. He has his own tattva. So when Brahma Tejas is misused like that, then it can be defeated. It's like we have Brahma Teja. The most famous, perhaps, in the Bhagavatam is right at the beginning, in the first canto, where we find the Brahman son of Shamika Rishi, Shringi. He had been trained in chanting of the mantras, but he didn't have the discrimination of when to use that Tejas and when to not use it. And so he became angry at King Parikshit, who was like, the descendant of the Pandavas, a pure devotee of God. He's holding back the Kali Yuga. He's a great ruler. And because his father experienced a little slight at King Parikshit, which was more or less he was covered by Yogamaya because he had not done anything like that before. He would never have insulted the Brahmins. So Shringi lost it and immediately used his Tejas to curse. And once that's used, it's very powerful. Now, Parikshit could have countered it because he was a pure Vaishnava, but he decided to see it as the will of the Lord, and then Bhagavatam got spoken. You know the story. So, but Prabhupada says in one of the purports that this is the beginning of the degradation of the Brahmin class. This is what happens, is that they have intelligence, they know the mantras, they know the Shastras, but they're not pure in motivation. They become corrupted by the age of Kali. So you find, like in India, you have a whole Brahminical class that basically are just descendants of Brahmins. They're called Brahma Bandhus. They have to have 2 things: the qualities and the work, what they actually do. This is how you can tell what everyone is. You may claim to be this or that. What do you actually do, and what are your qualities? That you can see. So you can't maintain the facade for long. Someone who knows the standard. So you have what they call the caste system in India, which is a corruption of Varnashram, where you have, just by being born the son of a Brahmin, you claim Brahminical privileges and you lord it over the other Varnas. So that's a characteristic of Kali Yuga. And in fact, Varna Sankara, you've heard this term before? Varna Sankara generally means unwanted population. Varna Sankara means offspring of mixed caste. When you mix them, there's a whole bunch of rules. It's like a Kshatriya or a Brahmin man should marry a Brahmin lady or a Kshatriya lady. But a Kshatriya man is not supposed to marry a Brahmin lady. You're not supposed to mix them, by the way. So, in this age, who knows who anyone is. It's all Varna Sankara. Anyway, so in this purport, Prabhupada talks about the need of having proper kings who can enforce the law. The kings are meant to be Rajarshis. Rajarshi is a combination of 2 words, Rishi and Raj. They become Rajarshi. I mean, they're not only kings with the power to rule and control, but they're also learned in the Shastra, so that they rule by the Shastra and by the advice of the Brahmins, who are a personified Shastra. That's the whole ideal. Then things are kept in check, and Dharma can actually prevail. That was Krishna's whole motivation in pushing the Kurukshetra war, in order to reinstall or to install Yudhishthira on the throne, because he is personified Dharma. And he showed how pure he was by being very reluctant to take the throne. If you read the first canto, you see he was mortified by all of the bloodshed. Not just the millions of soldiers that were killed, but also the animals. All of those elephants and the horses and everything. He's a Vaishnava. He was just completely dejected. And Bhishma Dev, right on the, lying on the bed of arrows, pierced by arrows, but having that power of being able to leave his body at his own will, stayed around and instructed Yudhishthira and encouraged him, and eventually he departed famously in chapter 9 of the first canto. So Prabhupada refers here to the darkness and the dust storm at the time of dissolution. So, this is one of the facts of life in the material world, is that everything is temporary. Not just on this planet, the whole universe, all the way from Brahmaloka down to Patala Loka, is eventually going to be destroyed. And so as human beings, the first thing we should inquire into, is there any remedy for that? Is this all there is? Is everything simply temporary? I'm also temporary? And that no matter what happens, I'll be destroyed personally, eventually everything will be destroyed. So where is there any meaning? If that's it, where is there any? Everything is just a facade and a fake. There's no ultimate meaning in everything if everything is just going to dissolve into a black hole for eternity. So that's why the very first question, as enjoined by the Vedanta Sutra, inquire into Brahman, the eternal truth, the source of everything. And we learn from the Vedanta Sutra. There's a friend of mine I picked up a Vedanta Sutra written by one of Prabhupada's godbrothers, and I encouraged him. Well, why go to that source when we have Vedanta Sutra written by or translated by Dravida Prabhu? Do you know that? Have you seen it? It has a nice introduction by none other than His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. So Vedanta Sutra is important for us, even though we don't study it directly. The Bhagavatam is declared in the Garuda Purana and in the Bhagavatam itself to be the actual, natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, written by the same author, beginning with the same words, Janmadyasya Yatonvaya, that's Sutra 2. Janmadyasya Yataha means that from which everything comes. That's what we should inquire into. Because if there's any solution to our problem of birth and death and temporary existence, it's going to be in the eternal source of everything. Anyway, so Bhagavatam is the answer, as it says in one chapter, the title of one chapter. So one of the things that Krishna is concerned about, as he says in the Bhagavad Gita, is dharma within the material world. Because without the dharma, without genuine dharma, then we're simply helpless. We're leading animalistic lives, and just be a great suffering. We always have to remember that although we are very good at forgetting our relationship with God, He never forgets us. And because He claims Himself as the Father, Sarva Yonishu Kunteya Murti Eksambhavandya Tasam Brahma Mahadyona Aham Bija Padakpita, right in chapter 14, that I am the seed-giving Father of all these species of life. So we as living entities, as jivas, are vibhinangsha, are angsha of Krishna. That angsha means we're part and parcel. We have His qualities. Just like a son or daughter has the qualities of the father and mother. So there's a bond there. So there's an unbreakable bond between Krishna and us, and He never forgets it. So even though he's so powerful, He can be completely absorbed in His Leela in Goloka Vrindavan, and at the same time aware of all of our troubles and wanting to do something about it. So He expands and He comes down, and He sometimes comes as Himself in order to reestablish Dharma-protected devotees, annihilate the miscreants, for our benefit, to give us another chance to become purified, to understand reality, and to go back to Godhead. So that's important, because how does it work in the material world where people become attracted, to one another? Well, part of it is the attraction is the fact that person's attracted to you. If you find someone who glorifies you and wants to help you, that in itself is an attractive force to that person. So, but Krishna is that way infinitely in spades. He's attracted to us because we're his children, and he wants to help us, and he's Sudinam Sarva Bhutanam, the best friend, well-wishing friend of every living entity. And it's just not some state of being. He actually acts on that identity and leaves the Shastra, sends his emissaries, comes himself, expands as the deity, as the prasadam, as the holy name. He's reaching out to us to give us a way of perceiving him even in our dark condition covered by all of this illusion and maya. So understanding that, we should appreciate that and try to give back. Try to follow Bhakti Yoga and serve Krishna. And one of the ways of doing it is understanding the Shastra, reading the Shastra, and spreading it. As my famous little phrase, I don't know if it's going to ever catch on in ISKCON. Learn it, live it, give it for the Shastra. Bhagavad Gita, learn it, live it, give it. That's really what we're all about. So here the King Barhi, who I don't think we hear about him before or after this verse, was Prachina Barhi. Is this the same Prachina Barhi? It's maybe the same Prachina Barhi who appears in Canto 6. Is Prachina Barhi Jiva? Yeah, it looks like Prachina Barhi. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. So he's still living, and he can pull back the plunder, but he's not going to help here. This is a much more powerful force, and they're going to take their revenge on Daksha and his minions, and it's going to be pretty hair-raising in the next few verses when we read what happens. But nobody dies. Daksha doesn't cease to exist. He gets reborn with a goat's head. He's chastened, quite chastened, and he goes on with his Prajapati business. All right, any questions on this? We can read another verse or two. All right. So that was text 8. Text 9. Prasuti, the wife of Daksha, along with the other women assembled, became very anxious and said, that's just a little introduction to the verse, it's not actually in the Sanskrit. This danger has been created by Daksha because of the death of Sati, who, even though completely innocent, quit her body as her sisters looked on. So even Daksha's wife is unhappy with him. Purport. Prasuti, being a soft-hearted woman, could immediately understand that the imminent danger approaching was due to the impious activity of hard-hearted Prajapati Daksha. He was so cruel that he would not save her youngest daughter, Sati. From the act of committing suicide in the presence of her sisters. Sati's mother could understand how much Sati had been pained by the insult of her father. Sati had been present along with the other daughters, and Daksha had purposely received all of them but her, because she happened to be the wife of Lord Shiva. This consideration convinced the wife of Daksha of the danger which was now ahead, and thus she knew that Daksha must be prepared to die for his heinous act. So this is all very dramatic. You can imagine the scene. Oh boy. Okay, let's go on another one. At the time of dissolution, Lord Shiva's hair is scattered, and he pierces the rulers of the different directions with his trident. He laughs and dances proudly, scattering their hands like flags, as thunder scatters the clouds all over the world. Purport. So this is Prasuti speaking. Prasuti, who appreciated the power and strength of her son-in-law, Lord Shiva, is describing what he does at the time of dissolution. This description indicates that the strength of Lord Shiva is so great that Daksha's power could not be set in comparison to it. At the time of dissolution, Lord Shiva, with his trident in hand, dances over the rulers of the different planets, and his hair is scattered, just as the clouds are scattered over all directions in order to plunge the different planets into incessant torrents of rain. In the last phase of dissolution, all the planets become inundated with water, and that inundation is caused by the dancing of Lord Shiva. This dance is called Pralaya, the Pralaya dance, the dance of dissolution. Prasuti could understand that the dangers ahead resulted not only from Daksha's having neglected her daughter, but also because of his neglecting the prestige and honor of Lord Shiva. So again, this lesson, there's something in Greeks, the Greek philosophy called hubris. It comes up in various of the plays, the Greek plays. And I'm going to read the dictionary, the definition of hubris, because it's not just something we read about, but it's something we experience also. Excessive pride or self-confidence, arrogance. So we know from the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita how there's a syndrome that leads downward, kind of a spiral downward, starting with kama, with lust. And Daksha is a personification of lust. I mean, that's his job, is to propagate the world. He's good at having sex and propagating progeny. But it's like handling fire, because lust easily turns to anger. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Dhyayato vishayan punksas sangas teshu bhajayate sangat sanjayate kama kama kuro bhajayate. By contemplating the objects of the senses, one gets attachment to them. And from that attachment, lust grows, develops. And from that lust, anger is generated. So that's what we're seeing here. Now, Shiva's anger is not as a result of lust. It's transcendental. It's personified Krishna's anger. But the anger and the envy of Daksha is totally material. It was totally unjustified, and it was due to his hubris, excessive pride and self-confidence and arrogance. Now we see that today. It's such a dangerous thing, especially in the leadership of the world. When people become excessively proud and arrogant, they lose the discrimination. They lose their discrimination. And I remember growing up, I grew up after World War II. I was born right after World War II. And all during my education, that was there was a lot. There were the movies, the books, the history books were filled with that. And we saw, the lesson was that we were learning is that the Nazis, and especially Hitler, was kind of mad, and he was mad with this hubris. Overconfidence, arrogance, demonic, you see. But that can arise in anyone. The myth was, those bad guys, we're the good guys, the West, and led by America. And we won the war due to heroism, and like that. But then there was World War II. Then there was the Cold War. And we built up this arsenal of nuclear weapons. And so did the Soviets, and so did the Chinese have it, So there's balance of terror. The MAD, you ever heard of the MAD philosophy? MAD is an acronym. Can anyone say what it stood for? This was a strategic balance. You remember? Mutually assured destruction. Now, in other words, I've got this big weapon, that's aimed at your head. You got a similar weapon aimed at my head, a big bazooka or something, And I know that if I see you shooting it, that you're doomed. I have enough time to shoot at mine, and so we'll both perish. So therefore, that keeps a balance. Not very wholesome, is it? And so what's happened over these last 63 years, since the end of 73 years, since the end of World War II, is that these arsenals have been built up, and the technology has grown exponentially, computer power and everything. Now they want to open up space. They had a treaty. There's a treaty, because everyone knew that we can't have these nuclear weapons flowing up above our heads at any moment going off. That'll create an impossible situation. So space will be for peace only. That was the idea. But now our present president, who's the embodiment of hubris, excessive pride of self-confidence, foolish. really. Wants to start a whole space race, armed space race. And the last president was also full of it, hubris. Oh yeah, we're going to modernize our nuclear arsenal. It only costs $2 trillion. All that money that could be spent for the infrastructure, so many things, medical. So this is a constant danger in the Kali Yuga, any Yuga, but especially in this Kali Yuga. What does Kali mean? The age of dissension and fight. Kali means fighting, war. So we're in the middle of this situation where this lesson that is being taught to us, the dangers of hubris, because the power of the Lord personified by Shiva's anger is going to bring Daksha low, and he'll learn his lesson, and he has prayers, But we're in the middle of it. It's a real life situation. It can happen with us also. In a sense, the whole enterprise of forgetting Krishna and trying to dominate this world, even on a little stage, is a result of hubris. It's a result of overconfidence, excessive pride in our bodily and mental strength, And it always leads to destruction. Always leads to destruction. On a personal level, on a social level, and every level at all. So that's why so much of bhakti has to do with surrender. Just the opposite. What's the first thing you do when you walk in the temple? You bow down, right? You bow down to the devotees, and you bow down to Prabhupada, you bow down to the deities. Namaste, namaste, namaste. Not mine. This body isn't mine. It's yours, The problem is, niyamagraha, that we go through the motions, and the actual meaning and the deep significance of what we're doing is often lost. So that's one of the things we're learning here, is that know whom to really honor, and actually honor them sincerely, and take shelter. We can take shelter of Shiva. We can pray to him. In this very canto, in a few chapters, we're going to hear the song of Lord Shiva. This is one of his prayers. My dear Lord, please reveal your form to me as Krishna, with lotus feet, like the lotus growing in the autumn season, like that. It's a prayer to Krishna. That's Lord Shiva, who he really is. But he's so merciful. He takes charge of the bhutas and the pretas, and gives them some chance. So in our own devotional service, we need to be very careful not to allow pride and hubris to enter in, because it can cause great destruction. The real danger is, just like the whole thing started with insults, right? So it can easily, blasphemy of actual devotees can result from when you allow hubris and anger to come up, and suddenly the whole devotional life is threatened by that. That's why it says it's a razor's edge. Okay, it's almost 8:30. I'm not going to try to activate that. If there's any comments or questions, this part of the Bhagavatam. Okay. Oh wait, we do have a question, and Shimal is in position to get that. Here we go.
So you were mentioning about what is it in the space? They wanted to float?
Well,
it's like bombs or atomic?
Yeah, they want to have one of the things of militarizing space is you'll have, now we have satellites up there. There's so many satellites, but they'll be armed,
but floating over
our heads,
United States,
everywhere. I mean, yeah. I mean, maybe we'll have an orbit where it doesn't,
but also
do it so it's not over the United States. But then the other guys will have them over the United States. We don't have a monopoly on this stuff. All it will do will be extend it and just increase everybody's anxiety, and mean that the already hair, we don't know this, and that's why we can get up in the morning, and that is that all of these weapons, you've heard of the silos. We got the weapon. Then we have the submarines, armed. So they're on a hair trigger alert. Because the whole danger is that, oh, they'll bomb us and destroy our arsenal, and that way they'll win the war. They'll destroy America, and they'll go on living. You know, it's a dream anyway. If like 100 of them blow up, even if India and Pakistan go to war, which is very likely, much more likely, that it can contaminate the whole atmosphere. They've already figured. You know, they have all these scenarios that they work at. When these bombs blow up, they lift a tremendous amount of dust into the air. That's what that mushroom cloud is, and that stays in the atmosphere. Now in my day in the 50s, they used to have tests within the atmosphere. I remember, I'll never forget, the Russians, they didn't have the kind of money that we had to spend on this thing, you know. So they would build these huge monster bombs because it was all like a PR thing. You're just trying to deter the other guys. You know, if there's a war, we're both dead. They try to deter anyone. That's called deterrence. So they blew up a 50 megaton nuclear weapon, hydrogen bomb. It's the biggest ones they have that are practical. You know, they're like 5 megaton, 10 megaton. This is a huge monster bomb that they blew up near, and they made sure there was film of it. You know, the whole idea is to scare the Americans so they won't start a war. Because the temptation is, the demonic temptation is, all right, look, we may lose a couple of cities, but we'll get Moscow and all the other big cities there. We'll completely wipe them out. We'll kill 100 million people. We don't care, and then we'll rule the world. That's where this ends. And we got guys there in our military thinking like that now. This guy McCain was just like that. I'm telling you. And what keeps them?
They'll take over the land.
Yeah, we'll take over. We'll rule the world. Russia is full of all kinds of minerals and things. You know the land mass. Anyone who looks at the map says, "Whoa, those guys are huge," you know. But they actually are. The economy is like as big as Virginia or something. Yeah, I mean because of what. Anyway, it's a whole history I don't want to get into now. But America, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, completely surprised in the early 90s, 1990 or something. We went in there and tried to show them how to be proper capitalists, but in doing that, we sucked out all kinds of money from there. And the population went down, the longevity went down, the standard of living went way down. You know, it was actually Putin who stabilized things and brought it back to some decent thing. But one thing they do have is a very sophisticated nuclear arsenal. They never gave that up. You know, so it truly is a mad thing, this mutually assured destruction. And because everybody's hostage to that. I don't hate the Russians. I assume you don't, most people. But the guys who are, have the power, you can imagine what it's like to have, $600, $700 billion yearly budget at your hands, but which you can spend on weapons and things, Goes to your head, oh, we'll develop this weapon, we'll undermine in this way, the secret infiltration, and we'll develop nuclear weapon that will completely dominate them, and we'll have no rivals. That's where these guys are thinking today in our government, So this is why, and according to, the development of Kali Yuga and human nature. When did you ever have weapons that were not used? You ever hear of the Mongol Empire? With I forget the guy who came out of Mongolia.
Genghis Khan.
Who is it? Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan. The very name strikes fear. So if you look at history, what was it, 1300s? He took over all of Russia. It's like a huge thing right into the middle of Europe. You know why? Because they had horses. They were on the horses. They were trained. And that hadn't developed yet in Europe and this whole cavalry thing. So they were able to ride faster and kill more efficiently. And they came right up there. But how are they going to administer something? There's no internet. There's no phones. You know what I mean? They're spread all over like what is now Russia. So eventually they were pushed back historically. But with the development of each new technology, the weapon, like in the West, it was like the Gatling gun. It was like a machine gun. You've seen them in old movies, There's nothing electric in there, but some guy is doing this and it's shooting all this. That was like a big game changer. So with each wave of new technology and weaponhood, then it creates a whole different strategic balance. So now with nuclear weapons, of course, they've been around, for 60 years, but all kinds of delivery systems and other things, and oh my God, all demoniac, killing, millions of people instead of thousands of people, and leaving radioactive waste in Iraq. The place is ruined. We saw. I can tell you later, but it's madness. And how is this going to be resolved? We have our scenario that the Kali Yuga goes on for another 427,000 years. I don't know. There's got to be some resolution where people en masse start chanting Hare Krishna and push back this demoniac force. But in our own lives, we got to be ready. I mean, that's just standard philosophy. We have to be ready for disaster at any moment by being strong in Krishna consciousness, chanting all the time, and trying to save as many people as possible. Yeah, and then we'll end.
So there's examples of America dropping bombs on other countries, but how many examples are there of others dropping bombs on America?
Well, America was never bombed in World War II. But we did a lot of bombing, and we're certainly the only one that dropped atom bombs on anyone. And we did it not to win the war. The war was already won, but to scare the Russians, to try to intimidate the Russians, because they were coming down. They were going to take some islands, and it was the whole thing. And then they didn't have the bomb at first, so there was all kinds of pressure. Well, let's just bomb Russia now, take over the world. But Eisenhower was in charge. Those who were actually in the war and saw the horror of war were in charge, and they were able to stop that madness from happening. Same thing happened in 1962 with the Cuban Missile Crisis. They wanted to go in there and just, wipe out Cuba or just conquer Cuba again, because they had that revolution. But Kennedy was sane, and he said no. And it turned out they already had some of those nuclear bombs mounted in there. And if you know the history, it would have probably started a nuclear war. We've come this close about 50 times to actually ending the world. It's definitely Krishna's intervention that the world has not blown up yet, because of Prabhupada coming and starting the movement. So we should be good devotees and try to keep that good fortune going. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
So why didn't any of them drop bombs in America?
I'm sorry?